Yes. Where are you? Settle down over there, you two. Well, good afternoon, everybody. And thank you all for joining us this evening. My name's Colin Bazra, and I'm the Mayor of Kelowna. And I'm really excited to facilitate this conversation this evening, which is really the merging of two pillars of our community. Obviously, the first being the hospital, our regional hospital facility, which we are also proud of and continues to grow and offer world-class healthcare. And then, of course, our technology industry, or what I like to call, and I'm sure a word you'll hear from the panelists, innovation, I think is more appropriate. But where technology and innovation is going to take our community to over the coming years and decades is very exciting. And so to have these two pillars merge and to get people from both communities together in the same room, I think is exciting. And I'm looking forward to hearing what our panelists have to say over the next little bit. So with that, I will get started. Actually, I do have one housekeeping note to let people know that restrooms are outside the theater, down the stairs, and to the left. And so with that housekeeping item finished, we will get started, and I'll introduce our panel. So it is my honor to first introduce Ragwa Gopal, the CEO of Accelerate Okanagan, and just recently named Kelowna's Man of the Year for 2015. Ragwa. Next, we have Jeff Keane, the director of the Okanagan Center for Innovation, and previously in the position that Ragwa held, and a person that I believe really helped put technology on the map in Kelowna, and that would be Jeff Keane. Next, we have Sheldon Gardner, who is the Chief Idea Officer for Volinspire. He is a successful business person who is, we are fortunate to have moved to our community and really is going to change how volunteering takes place in communities like Kelowna, and very excited to see the growth of Volinspire. So Sheldon Gardner. Next we have Jason Richards, is the President and CEO of Change Gamers, and really was one of the first great success stories of tech and innovation in Kelowna, and really excited to have Jason here with us. So Jason Richards, ladies and gentlemen. This next person's title says it all on its own. So we have Dr. Gary Goplan, neurosurgeon here at the Kelowna General Hospital. And last but not least, we have Doug Rankmore, CEO of the KGH Foundation. He and his team, as you are well aware, have helped raise millions and millions of dollars to provide this world-class healthcare facility here in our city. So Doug Rankmore. So I do have some questions for the panelists, and once we get through those questions, we will open it up to the floor. And so if anyone has questions, I'll go through how the microphones work and stuff once we get to that point. But we'll get started with some questions for our panel. And the first question, just so you know, and I'll try not to throw too many surprises at you guys, but the first question I actually want to break up into two parts. So I'm speaking directly now to our tech panelists. And I think we'll start with, who do we want to start with? Well, we'll start with the Man of the Year. And so Ragwa, we'll start with you. And this is a chance for our panelists on innovation to maybe do a little bit of bragging. But talk to us about the role of the technology sector in helping build our community. But maybe just stick to economy to start. And just tell us how the tech sector is really going to impact our local economy.
Thank you, Mayor. For sure, I mean, tech sector provides a very positive economic impact in the local, in the central Okanagan. As some of you probably have heard or seen the study that we did last year, it has an economic impact of $1 billion in central Okanagan. Has 600 technology companies employing about 7,500 people. Most of these jobs are not seasonal, so these jobs are year-round, which is kind of balances out all the seasonal employment. And the demographics is usually younger people working in the tech industry that really care about the environment. They want to live where they work, and they want to bike to work, and they do really care about what they do and what the impact on the environment is as well.
Thank you, Ragwa. Jeff?
Also, not just Central Okanagan, as Ragwa mentioned, but province-wide, the tech industry employs more people than forestry, mining, and oil and gas combined. Now at over 90,000 in the province. So the economic benefit, not just the Central Okanagan, but the entire province is immense. And I think you're going to start to see a shift in the provincial government thinking about putting more focus on tech. And if you think about it, a lot of people think about technology and how do you define that, or innovation, how do you define it? Is it its own industry? And it's starting to get, for the first time, we have our own Minister of Technology, Innovation and Citizen Services, so the government sees that as a priority. But in typical traditional industries like oil and mining and forestry that all involve tech kind of plays as horizontal against those verticals. So the benefits are really, we're just starting to reap the benefits locally here of some of that integration, some of the typical resource-based industries that have typically been more, manual-based.
Jason?
Really good points already. I think one thing to consider in technology is, as a society, just across the board, including in the Central Okanagan and everywhere else you see tech is receiving a ton of investment. So for whatever reason, right or wrong, good or bad, people associate it with things like innovation. It's exciting, and it receives a ton of capital, be it from angel investors all the way through to, large banks, and everybody has a tech play. So from, a pure economic perspective, the amount of investment that goes into tech is orders of magnitude over other industries. And as a community, it just makes a lot of sense for us to be part of that.
Sheldon?
Basically what these guys have said, I think one area I've really seen is youth retention in our community. We have a lot of people moving here from other places, retired people that are spending money here, but I think tech is one of the ways that we can retain our youth and our talent. Coming out of UBC, coming here, working on college, with the expansion of the tech sector, it's one way we can absolutely keep our young, talented people, and that's wonderful to see.
Excellent, thank you. So I think this time we'll start with Jeff. Sorry to put you on the spot, but to answer the rest of that question in terms of the impact the tech sector is having on our community, talk to me now about the philanthropic or social impact that tech either is having or has the potential to have on our community.
Mm-hmm. Traditionally, a lot of the wealth in the Okanagan has not come from tech, right? It's come from oil and gas, and it's come from real estate and, more traditional industries. But what we're seeing now with the development and the maturation of the technology community in the Okanagan, you're starting to see some of the benefits, the philanthropic benefits that come from that. And, I'll just use one example of that you probably all heard of is called Penguin. And, the fact that those three founders are all staying in the Okanagan, are all starting and growing new businesses here, and all have a strong philanthropic mindset, whether it's through the Care Society or other foundations that they donate money to, whether Shelter for Women, Free the Children, Me to We. These guys are involved in all those things in a big way, and we're just going to see more and more of that come out of the success in the tech community. The challenge is that there's just not that many of those that you can point your finger at and say, hey, this is a big success. There's a lot going on, and Sheldon can probably speak to this more than anybody, that no one ever hears about. And it's not just philanthropic in terms of money, but it's philanthropic in terms of time and volunteerism and the effort that goes in the community that kind of flies under the radar. So
Vol-Inspire is probably a good example
Absolutely.
of that. So Sheldon, over to you in terms of the impact that tech will have in philanthropy and social impact.
Well, I think tech can be an enabler of social change, and it can be basically impact at scale. If you look at what tech has done in situations like the Ice Bucket Challenge, could ALS ever raised $11 million without Facebook? Probably not. Tech has such it's a way to connect people in a very quick way, communications. Back to the young people in our community, we see it all the time, there's a lot of young people that actually want to be more connected, even in the tech sector. So if we can match up the skills and their abilities with the people that need the help, and how do you do that? I mean, we're a growing community. The only way we can do that is to leverage our technology. I mean, so I just get really excited about impact at scale and what tech can do to bring massive amount of people together. That isn't you're not able to do that without technology.
Regwa.
I'm going to talk about the potential of the tech sector in philanthropy. I think this particular generation are all about giving. It may not be, these people writing, $10,000, $100,000 checks, but micro giving on a regular basis, I think is something that they really grasp and associate with. So I think there's a huge potential for that.
Jason, anything further to add?
Yeah, I'd probably add, because the tech industry itself is new, it hasn't grown up with a long history of culture, 100 years or more in how a lot of our industries have grown up. And because it's so new, I think culture is placed at the forefront of tech companies, building great places to work, even competing for employee retention. And when you are in an industry, not taking away from any other industry that's philanthropically or socially involved, but when you're in an industry that's so new and progressive and almost trying to push to make a point to be socially engaged, it attracts people that are socially engaged to those companies, and then those companies or those individuals as well tend to be, I think, more active and socially engaged in the community, be it from a philanthropic perspective or, even in spending more time out and about in the community. And I think that in general has a really good overall impact just on how everyone else around you is being engaged.
So I'm going to go off script here a little bit just to go back to my tech guests. And we're attracting more and more people from outside of Kelowna to our city, which I think is phenomenal. But for those people, unlike myself, who was born in this great facility, they may not be aware of the things that take place here, the great world-class services that are provided. But of course, those all cost money. So if you could give Doug some advice in terms of how do we connect those people who want to give but maybe aren't sure where to give or aren't aware of an institution or facility such as this. How do we get their attention and say, hey, this world-class facility is here, but it needs help? How do we get the word out? Because a lot of people wouldn't even be aware of all of the great services that are provided here. I don't know who wants to touch that one first. So I guess I'll choose. Sheldon.
I think there's a lot of money looking for meaning and looking for impact. And, I think when people move to a community, especially if they've moved here and they're semi-retired and, bringing their resources with them, they are looking for purpose and getting involved in projects that they can make. I think the old way of retiring at 55, 65 and then doing nothing, I think is pretty much gone. People want to be active. They want to know that they're getting involved in something. So the one thing I would say is that really focus on the impact and really, the social return. There's a return on investment versus return on a donation. People are really looking to say, what is my return on donation? What impact can I make? And in the healthcare sector, there's the absolute massive opportunities to make change lives. So I think people are really looking for that impact metric. So, and whether they're moving in here, whether it's healthcare or whatever it is, really focus on that. So,
Jason?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. If it's an advice perspective coming from the tech industry, I feel like there's probably some grotesque Change Gamers plug involved in this conversation somewhere. Because that's a space we're directly working in right now on the youth side. But I would probably say the biggest thing being very active in investigating this space right now is that philanthropic organizations, charities and nonprofits need to change the way they message. The historical way that we've messaged with these very long and powerful, defined messages is no longer the way people consume content as a mass. I can't speak for every demographic, but right now the Facebook generation consumes huge volumes of content in tiny chunks. We don't consume one piece of content in a big chunk anymore. And so as we work, we're partnering with, and we're very excited to partner with, even with the KGH Foundation on what we're doing right now at Change Gamers. we're seeing a lot of content that, are 5 and 10 minute long videos about what charities and nonprofits are doing. And the analytics that we're getting back are just simply people don't watch that much content anymore. They want to see 38 videos at 1 second instead of one video at 38 seconds. And so we need to figure out how to take that messaging and put it into bite-sized chunks so that we can communicate to someone what relevant. What KGH Foundation does, 30 seconds or less. How do you capture me emotionally in that time and then make it the type of thing that I want to participate in, how it virally spins throughout and share exactly how it virally moves and is shared within all of our digital social networking platforms.
Awesome. Jeff, anything further to add?
No, I just to echo what these guys said. I think that people really want to know. I mean, how many times have we all donated to something? We have no idea what impact that donation had. We don't get any data or any feedback back on that donation. So actually helping people see that impact and feel that impact is huge. And I think what these guys are doing in their platforms are going to do that in a big way.
Ragwa?
I agree. I think the messaging is very important, and impact. Getting that message out of what the impact is. But the bigger thing is, I think, also trying to be pretty transparent out there about what it costs. And if I donate $1, how much of that really goes to impact somebody. I think those kind of metrics are very important. And I think engagement at a very early age. I don't think foundations have done a good job in trying to engage younger people. I think they've always kind of looked at their sales funnel as being all of the older people with a lot of money. But I think that model is probably starting to fade or die. I think we need to engage people at an early age, get them educated in giving. They're going to give for many years.
And I think on that point, the knowledge-based philanthropy is definitely growing. There's a lot of entrepreneurs that have had good exits, and they're looking for it to be involved. So if you can get them involved and tap into the knowledge, which ties into social enterprise a little bit at the question 5, I think you're going to find that the money will flow. So involvement and measurable impact, and money starts to flow.
So before we go to our other two guests, because I feel like I'm leaving them out, I do have one more question for our tech panelists before we go to the end of the table. So pull your crystal ball out and tell me what you see as the tech sector's legacy in building our community, 30, 40 years from now. And I'll start with Jason.
The tech sector's legacy, man. If we look at, coming back to my original point, if we look at the amount of money that, even at an institutional level, I'll just talk about that for a second, the amount of money that we're investing at an institutional level in technology right now, as a sector, I hope that we can suck the banks dry of every last cent and put it back into social programs. We should not be seeing Castnet articles about $600,000 reductions in education funding. We should be seeing articles in $2 million increases in education funding because we sucked it off a mutual fund somewhere, funneled it through a tech company, and through somebody's pocket, it ended up back in our community. So I think our opportunity right now is, while tech is so sexy, we need to find the right ways to take, our technology leaders and make sure that connection all happens.
Sheldon?
Well, I'm a bit biased, I guess. I'd like to see the tech sector legacy be, but how did we leverage technology to make our community a stronger place? We talk about job creation, we talk about taxation, but I think we need to also shift a bit of the tech sector's focus on, we have an amazing human capital in the tech sector, that if we all, as tech people, all work together, I think we can make a massive impact on the strength of our local community. So I hope it's more, there's a stronger focus on that going forward.
Ragwa?
Yeah, I think we'll transform how we live, how our downtown looks. I think the tech sector would be the force that will change all of that. Plus, I think on the philanthropy side, I think will change and create opportunities for organizations like hospitals or schools by creating a continuous giving, whether it's money or time.
Jeff, with the last word in terms of the tech sector legacy, maybe 30, 40 years from now after you cut the ribbon on the 5th or 6th Innovation Center?
Well, when we first started kind of visualizing and conceptualizing the Innovation Center, one of our big, hairy, audacious goals was 20,000 jobs in 10 years. And if I look 40 years out, I mean, that becomes a little bit overwhelming, I guess. But I think a really positive legacy we can leave in our community is that our kids and our kids' kids can get great jobs here if they want to stay. And they don't have to leave the community to get a great paying job and a clean and a green job, right? There's just so many opportunities for the community when you can create healthy companies with great paying jobs for young people. And I think the magic happens from there, and that's a great legacy to leave the community.
Well said. So now I'd like to bring in our other two guests, and I think we'll start with Doug, because this one's right in his wheelhouse, of course. So what impact has philanthropy had on healthcare in our region, and why is it so important?
There isn't any area that really isn't impacted by philanthropy. I was thinking about this, and I was trying to think of an area in the hospital or an area of healthcare that hasn't really been touched by philanthropy and by technology together. And really, if you go throughout the hospital, it's in the lab, it's microbiology, gastroenterology, vascular procedures, trauma rooms. It's really just throughout this institution and throughout hospitals throughout the country. Philanthropy has really provided pieces that just wouldn't otherwise be there. It provides care earlier, or in some cases years and years earlier. It reduces wait times. It prevents people from traveling. So the impact is pretty broad in terms of what happens in healthcare. The concept of technology in healthcare too is just really very so broad. There are procedures now done remotely via iPads that would otherwise have either not been possible, or they would have had to travel hours, or lives would have been lost because of it. So and these are things that have all been because of generosity of the community, and it moves the whole benchmark forward.
Thank you. Dr. Goplan, maybe just in general terms, because I think my next question would be for you, just how you personally, in your 17 years since you've just been in Kelowna, how your job has changed specifically, but maybe just from a general level first, just talk about philanthropy and the impact it's had on healthcare and why it's so important, just generally.
Well, it keeps us up to date and in the game. In socialized medicine, and I'm a big fan of socialized medicine, governments can provide much. And what they've provided for us now is a great big new facility, extra resources and that sort of thing. But specifically in surgery, we're very reliant upon our tools because we see what specific up-to-date tools can do, new procedures with better outcomes, safer procedures. And those tools don't come cheaply. There's new ones on the market every year. They have to be a proven technology and a successful technology and something that's going to last for a while. But once they've demonstrated that, it becomes the standard of care. We want to provide the standard of care here in Kelowna. That's the same as in Vancouver or Calgary or Edmonton or Toronto. We're a tertiary center here now. There's very little we should have to send elsewhere. We should be able to take care of people in a timely fashion with the most up-to-date procedures and tools. And the community and the philanthropy of the community enables us to do that. We've had donations last year that have brought us improvements in all sorts of surgery, all sorts of surgical procedures, anesthesia with their anesthesia machines, monitoring, tools in the lab that deliver results much quicker and much more accurately. And the bottom line is it's safer to be a patient and the outcomes are going to be better.
Excellent, thank you. So leading into my next question then, Dr. Goplan, and you've sort of touched on it, but maybe from a more of a personal perspective, what has been the impact of technological improvements in healthcare and patient outcomes?
Okay, the impact. Well, in general, it's better outcomes, better diagnostics. We found out what is ailing somebody specifically. What is the best way to treat that? And, I'll give some examples, some clinical examples. In neurosurgery, the service I provide, we now have Neuro Navigation. And To describe it quickly, it's when you're on the surface of the brain and there's a tumor down deep, you won't see it on the surface. You know where it is. Your MRI diagnostics have shown you exactly where it is. Tractography, some new software can tell us where the motor strips are, where the tracts of language are, how close to the tumor are they. And with Neuro Navigation, that's married to the imaging data. And in the operation, we can have a heads-up display on our microscope that will show us behind the tumor, almost like looking through the tumor. There's a great big blood vessel that we have to respect and preserve. And so it's not a surprise. We know where it is. We can work on this tumor, get it out of there, protect brain, protect blood vessels to brain. In addition, there's software, and we can change the wavelength on our microscope, for instance, and inject some dye. The anesthetist can inject some dye, and that will light up the tumor and the seeds around the tumor so we can get more of a resection of this tumor, a better outcome, a safer outcome for the patient. Their hospitalization will be less. They'll be home sooner. They'll be back to work sooner, and it's safer and better.
Sure. Excellent. Thank you.
I just wanted to mention a couple of other examples. For instance, in cardiology care, cardiac care, if you come in with some ischemia to your heart, years ago technology was much different, service was much different, but if you have a vessel that needs to be opened up, from the time you hit triage and emergency to the time that you're having a new stent put in for new plumbing of your coronary arteries is going to be 45 minutes or 30 minutes. And it's a timely care that will save heart muscle. So 2 examples of technology and better delivery of care, better outcomes, and safety.
Excellent. Thank you. So Doug, same question for you, because I know that the foundation speaks to a lot of patients to get their stories and to where they're wanting to share them, so that donors can see what impact they're making. So again, what has been the impact of technology improvements in healthcare and patient outcomes?
I have to follow the brain surgeon on talking about improvements in healthcare. Let me see. Broadly, there have been a number, certainly surgical aids in procedures, surgical procedures, those kinds of things, but even remote diagnosis, things like e-health or telehealth that provide people the comfort and security of going through a lot of what would have been travel from somewhere like Tumbler Ridge or Fort St. John to come and see a specialist 3 or 4 or 5 times. They can now do that with their family, with their primary care provider, have the diagnosis, and really only have to travel once for that and come here, and even to get the news can then do that with the support of their family at home, and that's all by improved telecommunications. So, there isn't, as I said, it's so broad here. One of the innovations that we have is a lab analysis device. It's taken microbial analysis from literally days to minutes, and from dollars a sample to pennies a sample. And that's really just had such an incredible impact on what the lab here can do, how it can save lives, the speed, the volume. So there just really isn't any area that hasn't really benefited from technology. Patient records, it's really across the board. Mm-hmm. And, having said that, there's a lot, I think, certainly I take the advice of the panel. I was listening very carefully. This is being recorded. I'll play it back and make sure I get all of the information. But there's a real opportunity for us as well, for the hospital and for the foundation, in terms of capitalizing on what's out on the horizon for technology in healthcare. And I think we've got a real advantage here in the Okanagan and in Kelowna by the presence we have here, by the work that's been done to attract people here, to really take advantage of that and to create something that can move this hospital even that much further with the resources that are here.
Before I go back to that point, I want to talk about open data. But before we do, because not everyone in the room may know what that is, so I wouldn't mind if somebody from our tech panel could just explain open data for a moment. Who wants to tackle that?
My neighbor wants to talk about open data. Open data in terms of electronic medical records is basically the ability to access your medical records no matter where you are or no matter what clinic you walk into. That's one example of open data, for example, and that's one thing that the health industry is trying to permeate and running into some challenges at some areas, but probably doing a pretty good job at trying to make it happen. So that's one example.
And providing access to a particular piece of data from very different angles. So right now, a doctor owns the data, and that's where it is residing, and nobody can use it. But opening it up so you can build apps or different applications so it can be used in many other ways by many different people.
Yeah, I think the openness controversy, the challenge of privacy versus accessibility, it's not necessarily just about you having access to your own records, but the power of big data now means that if we had open access to medical records, say across a population of 1 billion people, that we can look at analytics and data at a sample population so big that we could probably see things, well, I think we could probably guarantee we'll see things within those samples that you don't see on an individual layer. And that becomes more important as we start looking at transmutable viruses or bacteria that can spread in a population. And if you're in a hospital or just looking at one record, you'll never see the pattern and how to manage that. But if you have accessibility to the records on people on a even semi-regional scale, but ideally at one point a global scale that still respected privacy, that we could address healthcare problems from a social management perspective in a whole nother way that wasn't possible even 5 years ago, even from a big data analytics perspective. The challenge, of course, between privacy and that open/big data is a really hot topic. So
Sure. So thank you, because you went down the road I was going, but I wanted to get to the fact that so the City of Kelowna is trying to put out as much data as possible because we want entrepreneurs and people in innovation to be able to use that data to come up with solutions to make our community a better place. And so I guess my question would be either to both the doctor and to Doug, is there a willingness or what are the barriers to sharing data with the tech community to come up with even better solutions to healthcare?
You're looking to me. Thank you. Well, I know Interior Health loves it when I speak for them, so I'll try and avoid that. I think there's an openness to do whatever it takes to move healthcare forward. I think if there's a demonstrable impact from it that's positive for healthcare, I think certainly, probably on a larger scale, but certainly at the health authority level, I certainly haven't seen any indication that there's any difficulty with improving healthcare.
Okay, thank you. Doctor, anything to add further to that in terms of the whole issue around sharing data and trying to improve healthcare while, also trying to protect privacy rights of patients?
And that's it exactly, security. Nobody likes their personal health data known to somebody else that shouldn't be knowing it.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you. Anyone else on the tech side want to talk about open data and the potential it may have for healthcare solutions? I think Jason did a pretty good job of covering it off. Okay, so the last question is actually for everybody on the panel, and I certainly know it's near and dear to the innovation side of things. But let's talk about social enterprise. And I'm looking at you, Sheldon, because that's the business you're in. But talk to me about or define social enterprise, and if we can, maybe talk about if you have any healthcare examples. But just define social enterprise in terms of what it means to you.
Well, I think in the nonprofit charitable space, social enterprise is basically a charity or a nonprofit that wants to try to run a side business or try to operate in a social innovation fashion. So there are rules for nonprofits and charities to actually operate businesses. But I think we've seen a lot of successful examples where nonprofits have partnered with businesses, and I've seen a lot of great success stories around that. I don't have any specific healthcare examples, but there's social enterprises in the nonprofit space in Vancouver. There's Potluck Cafe. Lots of great examples in Vancouver. Here locally, you've got Metro Laundry, there's nonprofits that are running Metro Moving. So there's growth in that sector. There's a lot of challenges in that sector from what we can see. In the for-profit space, it's basically a company that puts purpose before profit. So there's a great movement and there's a growing trend of social enterprise for-profit companies The B Corp movement in the U.S. is absolutely on fire. There's 20,000 companies that have submitted B Corp applications. We're a community contribution company. It's a new form of a legal entity that the BC government has set up for that purpose. So there is the social enterprise movement is definitely growing. There's opportunities in the charity and nonprofit sector, but there's lots of landmines. I think that, if there's nonprofits in the room here, that I think there's lots of models that exist out there that they're, look to the successful models and there's lots of examples, and I'd be happy to share them with you. So,
Raghav?
To me, social enterprise is basically taking a business approach to a social mission. So whether it be nonprofits or government programs or whatever. So traditionally, nonprofits would be always going out there trying to raise money or relying on some sort of funding agencies. What social enterprise basically does is changes the model to say it's okay to be able to have a sustainable model that you're not always relying on agencies or government for funding. So to me, that's what it is. So
Sure. Anyone else on the panel want to make a comment in regards to social enterprise?
Yeah, I'd like to, Colin. Actually, I'm not sure many people know, May is actually Social Enterprise Month. So very appropriate. There's lots of really good examples. Goodwill is a very early one. It's a model that has been very successful. It's a huge enterprise in the U.S. There's a great one in the Lower Mainland. It's Atira Property Management, and it's run solely by a women's resource center. It's a multi-million-dollar business, a property management business that does returns all its profits to the social cause. And actually, it's probably one of the best kept secrets. The foundation runs 6 businesses. We generate $2 million worth of business and net about $850,000 to contribute back to the hospital through 6 businesses here in the hospital and through a thrift store.
Nice.
Doug, is the confectionery all here locally at the hospital as a social enterprise?
Yeah, it's run by the foundation with our auxiliaries, and it's all volunteer labor.
That would be another example.
Yep.
Anyone else?
I guess, I would almost say we've historically always looked at the nonprofit and charity sector as the do good, make good part of our community, and the enterprise as the make money part of our communities at every level that you look at it. And I think it's the opportunity, we shouldn't have to create a new category called social enterprise. At this level of awareness, you would literally have to live in a rock to not be getting educated and aware on what it means to participate in your community, be that, your house, your neighborhood, your city, your country, the planet. And I think social enterprise for us right now should be the standard that we hold everything we do against. It's hard not to shop at Walmart because it's cheaper. There's a lot of hard decisions to make, but I think we need to start setting the expectation that social enterprise is what we should all be doing. There is no reason not. We should be encouraging more sustainability with our nonprofits. We should be encouraging more community and social engagement with our for-profits, and bridging that all together. So it should be everything we're doing now. I think from a definition perspective, we should hold everyone and be accountable ourselves to this level. I'm not all the time. I still totally shop at Walmart. But at least we can start to put that out as a goal, as a thought process for all of us. That's what social enterprise is what we should be doing.
The graduates coming out of university today in the business schools are very aware of what social entrepreneurship and social enterprise means. When I graduated from business school, there wasn't even a course called that. Now Harvard, Stanford, all the leading business schools around the world actually have, I read a quote the other day. It was Drucker saying, if a company doesn't have a social purpose, they won't survive going forward. He believes that it's that powerful because it's driven based on consumers. We're much more aware of what companies are doing on the planet. There's again where technology is playing a role. We are very aware of what a company is doing in Indonesia. 20 years ago, we had no clue. So if there's a sweatshop and people are abusing labor and child labor, we know about it. technology travels. So I think it's really being driven based on it's a consumer-driven model. I'd love to see it be a business-led model, but I think it's mostly being led right now by a wave of consumers that want to buy from socially conscious companies. So, especially in the for-profit world. So.
Yeah, let's make one little comment on, I've got two daughters that are, 22 and 24, and I don't know about you guys that have kids, in the range of, 15 to 25, but they're way more socially conscious than probably we all were in the room at their age. And it's nothing that we trained them. Like, we didn't have to educate them on, we didn't specifically train them on these things. It's just part of the culture of that generation, which is so awesome. And it's about us trying to feed that and encourage that and help them grow and be successful in their ventures. The other thing I wanted to touch on a little bit is just the power of, we all talked about social enterprise, social entrepreneurship, but the powerful, incredible power of integrating technology and innovation into those enterprises. And that's when, back to Sheldon's comment earlier about scalability. And that's where I think we have a tremendous opportunity as technologists and innovators is what can we apply to those businesses to help them scale faster and become better, stronger companies? And technology can play a huge role in that. It's just finding the right channels to do it.
Excellent. Well, thank you all on the panel. I think what we'll do now is we'll have some audience participation if anyone would like to. And at this point, we will open it up to questions if anyone has any. So there are microphones in front of you, or at least in your vicinity. And so we prefer, because we are recording it, if we could get your question on the microphone. So if you do have a question, maybe just raise your hand, and then you'll just press the button. And if your button lights up solid, that means that everything's a go, and you can go ahead and ask your question. But do we have any questions in the audience for any of our panelists? Don't be shy.
Is there currently any way to direct or limit where donations are applied in the KGH Foundation? You say you want to put it to not towards copiers or something like that.
Absolutely. Let's talk afterwards. No, the foundation gathers funds based really on donors' interests, and so we're very able to kind of work with donors to find out if it's a traditional area in the hospital. It's a much more straightforward piece. If it's something that takes a little bit of work, then we often work with donors to try and find out if that's something that the hospital is interested in developing.
Anyone else? Don't be shy.
Sumasan. Hi, Nicole Rustad, and hi guys, I know many of you. I'm just curious because, and I apologize I was late, but did you address specifically how this hospital is working with innovators and philanthropists in this community, specifically on our issues in the medical care here in IAH?
I don't think specifically current work. We went through kind of some of the innovations in technology and the impact it's had on both healthcare and philanthropy. It was one of my comments that I think it's the work to be done. How do we engage the sector in terms of how we go forward and how we improve things here?
And Jason did make some comments as well in terms of how Doug and the KGH Foundation is able to reach out to the tech community in an impactful way to get their attention, particularly those who are moving to our community, who wouldn't know that if they haven't had an opportunity to visit here, wouldn't know the great things that are taking place in this facility. And so just how to be able to reach out to them and to get their attention.
Colin, maybe I'll just...
Yeah.
Sure, Mr. Mayor. Sure. I'm still not used
Colin
to that.
is fine.
At Change Gamers, we're building a social networking platform to get kids and youth engaged with nonprofit and charity and different projects and social impact projects. And we're working with a few dozen, right now as we're building a platform, a few dozen charities and nonprofits throughout the Kelowna area, and then another dozen or so on a global scale. And I would point out that just specific to the KGH Foundation, they've probably been the most engaged group of people to embrace, integrating technology into what they're doing that we're working with, and this includes technology-focused nonprofits and charities that we're working with that are 100 times the size, but their interest and willingness to get involved and learn from us, but also contribute and be part of the development of what we're doing, which is sort of, social networking and call it leading tech or whatever you want to, has been pretty overwhelming. So, directly, and maybe that's a necessary pat on the back to the KGH Foundation, but as far as what they're doing and getting engaged right now with innovation has been fantastic.
And just one other question and follow-up. Is UBC working with the technology sector to look for innovative ways to solve problems in the medical health arena?
Not that I know of currently. Not in the startup community, I should say, specifically. Yes.
There's a new initiative. So it's,
sorry to interrupt, Jennifer. Would you mind just introducing yourself just quickly for
sorry,
people
yes.
who don't know you, please?
Sorry, Jennifer Tedman-Jones with MyTax. We're a private not-for-profit that helps companies and not-for-profits get connected with university researchers. And there's a brand new fund, and actually it's quite new, actually, even across MyTax, where a donor has specifically allocated his donation, so the Impact Foundation, with the idea that the researchers must partner with a community partner or a company specifically involved in wellness. So it's called the Innovations in Wellness Fund. And the idea originally was that it's to have impact in the community in a very specific way on a very specific topic. It's very new, so it's I can share the link if you're interested. But some of the companies and not-for-profits that are involved in would include Welcome Back MRI up in Kamloops. Other ones, Central Okanagan Foundation, United Way, who are looking at impacting, how do we use geospatial mapping to help with homelessness, like resources, how do we allocate resources to homelessness, protection for basically body protection for the defense sector, various impacts. So anyway, I thought I'd
Thank you, Jennifer. And Nicole, part of the reason too why I wanted to just open it up a little bit to open data is if we want the tech community to find solutions, they need access to data to be able to do that. And so we have to, as Jason has talked about, find ways to be able to share it so that they can find, better solutions. Did we have more questions?
It's mostly because you keep talking about this open data concept that I started talking about.
Well, I don't claim to know a lot about it. I just know that we need to be sharing it if we're going to find solutions.
My name is Gail Grout. I'm the Outcome Services Manager at TELUS Health. We are a small group in Kelowna who were acquired by TELUS Health over 2 years ago. The primary focus of the work that we do is in electronic medical records for clinicians. We got the same vision. As a patient, we definitely want patient data to be accessible when needed. We're finding right now, though, our physicians currently don't even have the information that they need to make the right decisions when the patient presents themselves. So it's one of those things where we're trying to find that balance. Again, patient privacy, but still trying to gather enough of the data so that we can empower our physicians with the data. They're not technology issues that are holding us back. We could have done this a long time ago if it's just technology. Mm-hmm. So that's just kind of one of the pieces that I want to put out there. My question, if I could, and this is more pointed to Dr. Gopal, what are the two pieces of data or information that you find that you're missing commonly or regularly when you're trying to do your work?
Myself, not too much, because in surgery, your information is the direct acquisition of data from your patient, interviewing the patient, seeing what's wrong, asking questions, examining. So your data collection is direct from the patient. From a surgical point of view, the next step is diagnostics, and most of those are imaging. They're on site. So in acute care, everything that we need is there. But if there's someone else filling in for another physician or surgeon, what's gone on before? Sometimes the patient can't deliver that information. It would be nice to see, gee, what was that MRI looking like that was done in Ontario 8 years ago? How does it compare to now? The interprovincial borders are solid. You just can't transmit data between provinces in healthcare. I guess that's one obstacle that I can think of. And there are others if you gave me enough time, but...
Mind if I jump in on that really quickly? Putting on a little bit of a different hat, but to that question. So in my other side of the house, I'm a volunteer firefighter with West Kelowna Fire Rescue. And so speaking as a first responder, which if we expand the medical profession out to, when sometimes we identify a patient all the way to when you might operate on them sometime later, right now when we show up on scene to someone that was in a car accident or just called 911 because they had chest pains, we have almost no access to things like past medical records or medications, allergies, and things like that can dramatically impact how a first responder can help stabilize that patient for transport to the hospital the next step. And not only do we not have it as a firefighter, which most firefighters wouldn't know how to use it anyways, but when a paramedic or advanced life support shows up, they don't have access to it either. And it's not until the point when they would check into the hospital and then even possibly delayed from that point that any of that information is available on a patient. And I don't know the challenges firsthand of how it would be in there, but that's something that access to patient data would fix, almost instantaneously. And like Gail mentioned, the technology's been there for 10 years, perhaps longer since we've had data access across mobile networks. I think you mentioned it's not a data issue or technology issue. It's a social awareness issue and a security issue. I would even probably argue that it's not even a security issue. It's a media issue and a publicity issue around how we have access to data and stuff like that. So I think from those perspectives, it starts to really open our eyes on how much of an impact it could have.
Do we have any further questions? Sean?
Sean Peel. You brought up a point from one of the guys on the panel that are with the tech sector about the not-for-profits having a lot to learn. I appreciate that comment. I know when I was with the Hospital Foundation, we did, and I know they still do, spend a lot of time figuring out how to get money out of a new demographic. Traditionally, there's been large donors who've made large donations, but that's changing. So we sit around and we talk about the youth and how do we engage the youth to be part of giving in that way. And then I hear a lot tonight about social enterprise. And what I'm asking, I guess the panel members that are with the tech sector, when you look at the 20-somethings and the 30-somethings that are in that area, are we doing it wrong by going and saying, we want you to support, so give some money? Are there other ways that you can entice them to give back? Because awareness is one thing, but at the end of the day, you're looking for dollars. And if maybe the way of doing that is through social enterprise initiatives, we should stop focusing on saying, well, let's put on big campaigns and let's do more of these types of businesses that we know we can engage them, that they'll spend money and time and have the same return. So that's my question.
I think with that particular generation, I think asking them to donate, I don't think that works. I think that actually pushes them off. I think what you really need to do is it's more about information. It's about sharing your story, sharing your information, and see if it resonates with them. If it does, you're probably going to get a lifelong micro donor. So like you said, Sean, it's not, it's not going to be big donation from them, but they're going to be donating little amounts, but be donating for a long period of time.
I think on a corporate level, to engage the employees around a cause, we see it all the time, the businesses we're dealing with. There's a huge opportunity there for nonprofits to partner with business, but engaging their employees in a different type of way, as opposed to going to the corporation and say, can you give me a donation? Maybe go to the corporation and say, we have an opportunity to engage your employees around a cause, which will lead to a donation. Two different asks. And I think that when they get their employees involved, which are millennial employees, not only will they get involved as a company, that they tend to get involved after hours, on weekends. They're more aware of the cause. So when you can target large groups of young employees that work for corporations, I think that's a great way to get them engaged in your cause.
Jeff or Jason, anything further down on that? Good. Yes, sir.
Now, Clifford, I have a question in relation to the medical records.
Hold on just a second. Your microphone isn't working. Just a sec. Maybe try pushing the button again. Or is there some... Oh, sorry. We've got... There we go. You're good now.
Thank you, Mel Clifford. My question is around the medical records and looking at the tech industry moving forward and innovation. So what can they do to actually give me and individuals my own medical records so that I have ownership and can control them, as against them being out there in some other database, so that I'm responsible for my own medical records, and therefore if a first responder comes, I have them in some sort of tech form.
Again, I don't think that's a technology issue. I think.
Oh, sure. Go ahead, Raghav.
From technology point of view, I mean, providing that is very, very simple. It's the will of wherever that record exists or lies today. How are they going to open it up so that you can have that access? I see it happening lots already. I think if you go, I went to the medical labs 5 years ago. You just go do your test, and then you have to go to your doctor and find out what happened. Today, when I go have my blood test, I can register, go home. By the end of the day, you can actually look online and see what has happened, and then you can phone your doctor to see if you really need to see. So it's happening. But it's not a technology issue. It's not like the technology cannot do it. It's just, is there will or where the data lies for them to open it to have that access?
Dr. Gopal, anything further to add on that topic?
Yeah, I'm fully in support of people having access to all of their medical records, but I would also describe one should be very cautious, because a typical appointment nowadays has people coming in to see us, and they know their x-ray report, they have had it sent to them, they have photocopies of their x-ray report, and their impression of their x-ray and their condition is completely, they just don't have the context for interpreting it. And about half of any appointment right now is bringing people down from their anxiety and fear, because invariably they've gone on the internet and looked up all the worst examples of what they... and it's the context that's not carried by data. And that's why you have professionals to explain to you your context. So on one hand, everybody should have access to any test that's done. They should have a complete record. But there is so much anxiety now associated with people that have unexplained data to them and unfiltered data. So I don't know how you give people that information with context immediately.
Thank you. To the back again.
I'd like to offer a response to that. I think you could allow people access to their information with a simple legislative change. Right now, the model we have is physicians are locked into certain vendors. It costs you $10,000, and you lose a lot of information if you try to change from one system to another. As the lady was mentioning, it's not a technology problem. Patients are locked into physicians who have their records for the same reason, because they're afraid of taking their records. It's not portable. What they did in the U.S. and several states is add another P to the HIPAA, the HIPAA Privacy Act, and the second P was for portability. If you made legislative changes and said that someone has access not just to their healthcare information, but in a digital format, machine readable, then patients are going to take this information and start using systems that we haven't imagined yet. And if we're not ready with the infrastructure in place to start steward that data and give them the access that they require, they're just going to go around us. The only reason we're in this predicament where no other industry is because we've got a three-party system with the payer, the provider, and the patient all operating in isolation. Once the patient has access to digital information, they're going to confer directly with their provider, and IHA and government infrastructure won't be as relevant.
Thank you, sir. I know not a fight I'm ready to take on yet. I can't even get clean water in my city yet, but maybe a fight for another day. Do we have any other questions? Mr. Nielsen.
Sean, I think your comments were very well pointed as are things being done wrong. And I'm going to direct this actually to Doug. From experience and very stereotypically, the technology sector is more focused on prevention. And I think if we surveyed a lot of the staff at many of the technology firms, they want never to see the inside of this hospital. And so I guess my question would be, what is the KGH Foundation or the surrounding organizations doing to support the technology sector in that way and support those employees?
Our activities are fairly broad. We work with corporations how they want to work. We do have several examples where, we've had corporations come to us and say, we want something for our employees to be involved in that generates gifts both based on a volunteer basis and on a cash basis from the company. So we do that quite often. One of the things that the hospital foundation is faced with is that we don't generate projects on our own. So, we generate money for the needs for the hospital, for healthcare in the community. And so I think there's a real opportunity for companies to drive some of this as well, to say, we'd like to contribute to a particular cause or create a particular solution in the community. We've got a particular resource. Would you work with us? And we're always happy to work when people have that level of energy to support healthcare.
Thank you, Doug. Any further questions? I think we'll take a couple more.
Nicole has one.
Actually, if you don't mind, Nicole, I'll go to the back first and then come back to the front.
In terms of volunteering and technology, the demand for volunteers for KGH Foundation, I'm not sure what the demand is, but I'm curious if there's a link to technology. How are you capturing those volunteers? Are you servicing that properly? Is that a challenge, or is that something you got a good handle on?
We're not capturing volunteers just to have volunteers. They have to have a particular purpose. And so when there's we have an event, we have a gala, we are certainly attached to a number of different companies in town who have supported that. As I said, we operate 6 businesses, 3 of them here in the hospital. And we work with a wide variety of volunteers, about 400 volunteers who support that. They're not targeted to any particular industry. They're a broad cross-section of ages. We have programs for kids out of high schools. People from all walks of life support that volunteer activity. But there isn't one specifically targeted at the tech sector.
I was curious, what's the procedure you use to organize your volunteers and make sure that you're aligned and have the support you need? What's your system?
We go out and we access volunteers from a variety of volunteer fairs. We go to schools. We advertise publicly. We interview people when they come, find out what their interest is, see if we have a match for them. If we don't, then we certainly refer to other services. If their time level interest and experience can help out in some of the venues, then we match them up to one of the jobs that we have. And we have, it's about 96% of our workforce in those businesses is volunteer. So all of the scheduling is done by volunteers. All of the treasury accounting is done by volunteers under the supervision of an accountant. But it's pretty much, kind of a model of a volunteer-run business. It's pretty much top to bottom.
Thank you.
I think the veiled question there was, are you using Vol-Inspire yet? But you don't have to answer that question. Nicole.
Doug and I are meeting next week.
Oh, we've got a microphone on somewhere. If we could just have the gentleman. There we go. Just turn that microphone off. There we go, Nicole.
I was just going to piggyback on what Sean Peel had said, and I think it weaves into some of the other areas. So I lead corporate social responsibility for a segment of the Walt Disney Company and many of our STEM initiatives globally, as well as our skills-based volunteerism for tech employees. And one of the things that I'm wondering is, to engage that millennial and the younger population in this community around healthcare and tech. Have you done any sort of like a hospital-sponsored hackathon around technology and solving problems in this community, and done that in partnership with UBC and the college? I just think that would be a really engaging way and a creative way to get younger generations excited about healthcare and this hospital and what we're doing here in this community.
When I figure out what you're referring to, I'm sure we'd be very interested.
The good news is there's people at the table to help you with that, Doug. So perfect.
It's one of the purposes that we put this together. This is a bit of a brave new world for a traditional philanthropy organization, and we want to understand what that looks like, and we want to be relevant and not kind of run into do the wrong things and run into walls. We certainly have been conscious of it. I'm going to say for the last 3 or 4 years, really, is kind of our progression in it. And we've really started to work on what does this mean. And if you look in philanthropy overall and the tech sector involvement in philanthropy, it's a brand new sector for all of philanthropy. So, a lot of the conferences are now starting to come up with, a lot more interest and ideas and beginning to grasp this. Is this a donation-based interaction? Is this an awareness-based interaction? Is this an involvement and engagement-based interaction? So I think we're really early. I think we're very fortunate here. We've got great help in figuring that out, but we're just beginning.
You bring up a good point, Nicole. I think there's also a bigger opportunity here that, great companies start by solving big problems. I think there's a gap there that there could be actually business opportunities that technology companies could be helping solve. And Doug, that would be something that we could try to bridge the gap. I know that a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of startups down there are struggling to find a business model that works. But maybe there's actually some health problems, whether it be data and we've got some talented people that are looking for startups. Mm-hmm. So if you bridge those two together, you create great technology startups around healthcare. And if those companies were to exit someday, that could lead to a very good donation to the
that's something, actually, good point. That's something that we at AO is one of the focus, one of the programs that we'll start. We'll call it Innovation Exchange. We'll take an entity, whether it's hospital or a company, I'll get them to lay out all of the issues or problems that they need solved. We'll bring in some innovation people that want to build, get them together in a room and then try and do that. So this is something that hasn't happened yet, but it's something that we are.
Yeah, we have a lot of people flying here from US and abroad that are selling technology products to our BC healthcare system. I think one of the ways we could develop help young technology companies thrive and actually solve local problems. There's an opportunity there.
Yes, I was going to mention, some of you might be familiar with startup weekends that are 54-hour events. They happen over a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's a group of people that get together and pitch ideas, and those ideas are voted on. And over the next 54 hours, the top 3 or 4 ideas are, teams are formed around those between 7 to 10 people and actually build a company and build a product, and they pitch that concept on the Sunday evening for, awards and recognition and things like that. But what we're seeing is those startup weekends are becoming industry focused now in some areas. And that could be a great way for, KGH Foundation or someone to hold a health startup weekend or a health industry startup weekend where you get a bunch of really creative young entrepreneurs that want to solve a problem. And, you could match that up. And sometimes those are purchased, right? And companies are created out of those. The other thing that we're seeing in, typical accelerators, people have probably heard of technology accelerators, which is basically organizations that help entrepreneurs start and grow companies. And Accelerator Okanagan would be a good example of that. And we're starting to see now corporate accelerators where they're actually focused on solving corporate business and corporate challenges. So Nike has a Nike accelerator where they actually become, they bring in people and they innovate for Nike and they actually solve Nike problems. So again, we could look at corporate accelerators that are focused on healthcare and startup weekends that are focused on healthcare. If you really want to engage youth and people, I think that's a great way to see the community.
Disney has an accelerator program, and we also do a tech hackathon that is a year-long process and matching different skills-based volunteers to it, and it would be something that would be really amazing, I think, for you guys.
Yeah.
Back to the data, open data question, though. I mean, one of the challenges in healthcare is that most of the big innovations we think of in healthcare today are procedural or hardware or pharmaceutical. Those aren't the challenges that a bunch of super nerds writing out code for a weekend are able to even address, right? So what we need to get to is a place where things like data are open, so that now we can take these super nerds and I mean that in a super endearing way, but where we can take them and put them onto problems like that, because you can't sit down, 10 of the smartest pharmaceutical people on the planet for a weekend and say, hey, address this problem pharmaceutically. I mean, it takes years for that stuff to happen, and opening up data and making, a little more of that available in the healthcare industry, but other industries suffer from the same challenges, will allow that type of innovation to take place. We think of it in the tech industry like a hackathon is such a great way to solve a problem, but anyone here not in the tech industry probably is like, what's a hackathon? Like, that's not even a concept that, most industries can still address, because they're not addressing data-oriented issues. Maybe scheduling software for nurses would be a good technology. I don't know if anyone around here has ever thought of that. But.
No?
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Lynn Heinrich, and I'm here on from a personal point of view, primarily. When the event came across my desk, saw some keywords that really rang true to me. My father, who's a retired surgeon here in the community, and I have been dealing with my mom, who was diagnosed with Alzheimer's about 5 years ago. And over that course of that time, we have been dealing with interior health and a number of societies and care homes, practitioners, unfortunately not KGH. But the words that came to my attention were things like community, social, legacy, technology, and I guess I don't know if I have a question as much as I'd like to plant a seed, and I've heard lots tonight that suggest that there may be avenues to pull some entities together so they work better. When you try and navigate through the system as it stands now, it's a frustrating and poorly organized system with barriers and walls around people that want to help but don't communicate with each other. So you have practitioners, you start with practitioners, they know very little about what happens in our community around Alzheimer's. They don't have the resources, at least the ones that we dealt with. There are specialties in our community like geriatric psychiatrists who seem very disconnected from the care homes, care facilities, and say the Alzheimer's Association. They all seem disconnected. So my father and I, over the course of the 5 years, and him being a retired surgeon, has, sort of an inside look, or has had experience within the medical field. I can only imagine what it's like if you have no exposure and no understanding of the disease and how to navigate. So it was very helpful for me to have my dad alongside. I'll just add another point. We met a lot of people who were dealing with Alzheimer's who had family members who were removed. So they might be the daughter dealing with the mother and the dad, but her siblings are removed. So to me, there seems like there's this great opportunity for technology and health and associations and interior health and care homes to come together and have sharing of information, whether that's big data or simply, a list of help within our community. So if we were going to leave a legacy for this huge population in Kelowna who is aging and who will be dealing with Alzheimer's more and more every day, I think that would be a great place to start. And I personally would volunteer, but I don't know where to go.
Thank you. Does anyone want to make a comment to that?
Service coordination is a huge issue. It absolutely is. I'm not sure it's just a technology issue. There may be some pieces that technology can aid to it. But we created a very complicated system with all the pieces that don't communicate, not necessarily because of technology, but because of competitive interests or differences in professional standards and things like that. So I sympathize with your challenge. It's one that's in a lot of sectors in the community.
Well said. Well, everyone, I want to thank you all for joining us this evening, and thank you to the panelists. And it's my pleasure to introduce our Interior Health Authority Board Chair, Erwin Mulzer. Erwin, please join us.
Wow. Things were just getting going. Colin, do we really have to wrap this up? Because I get the sense that we're just really scratching the surface. Panelists, thank you. You all contributed from your own perspective, from your own vantage point, incredibly well. But as is always the case, and of course you were extremely well moderated by His Worship the Mayor, Colin. Good job as always. But as is always the case, where it really, really gets interesting and things start, the feathers start to fly, is when you start engaging with the audience. I want to thank all of you. I'd love to respond to some of the individual items here. I've got to tell you, you introduced me as, I am the board chair of Interior Health. Been on the board for about 10 years. I'm going to tell you a little bit so you understand where I'm coming from. You can judge how to assess what I say. Either believing some of it or discounting some of it. You need to calibrate. But I've also been on the board. I provided board oversight for all of the large P3 capital projects. So for us here in this room, that means about $1 billion worth of bricks and mortar projects here in the Okanagan. It's one of the things that makes Kelowna such an exciting, invigorating, incredible place that it is. My wife and I moved here about 13 years ago. I took early retirement. I got to tell you something else about my background. I'm a career management consultant. I have my own firm. I was with the majors as a partner with PricewaterhouseCoopers. When we sold our global consulting business, I went over to IBM, their global consulting practice, as a consulting partner with them. None of this facility that you see now existed. This campus of care was not here. We didn't have the university. These are two major economic drivers. Most people don't even, they're aware of it, but they don't always think about it. Our high-tech sector, to have a tech hub in any city is an incredible opportunity. That, to me, came as a surprise. So we are so lucky. And so I want to just say that what we heard was the boundaries. What I heard, let me try and paraphrase a little bit. The boundaries are blurring. Traditional boundaries and fences between industry sectors, between projects, between workers, between different age group of workers, and the community spirit. I heard things about social equity. There's also a closely connected term called what I call social license. Very few, the largest of companies today, know about social license. The World Banks of the world, you name them. They understand. I've got a couple of business degrees. I'll guarantee you, up until very, very recently, standard Business 101 class with your first green business students was social responsibility of business. And the prof would stand at the front of a room like this and say, is there such a thing as social responsibility? And the standard scripted, framed discussion that would follow is, of course not, because business is all about profit. We know that isn't the case now. And it was so eloquently said by a couple of our panelists here and in our audience. We had questions about technology and healthcare. I have to tell you, I've been an IT partner all my life. One of the biggest barriers and I believe one of the most strategic enablers to the healthcare transformation that we have got to and must take has to do with technology. You touched on it, quite a number of you. It surprised me, actually. And it's not just electronic medical health records, but it has to start there. We cannot have new transformed models of primary health care, which we have to get to another point, which is to keep us out of hospitals and acute care facilities. We can't service enough people in our acute care settings. We can't build them fast enough. This is a state-of-the-art facility. We need to treat really, really sick episodic care here. A lot of what happens here can be prevented, as someone has said, should more rightly be treated, managed in the community. A big part of why we can't do that well, there's a lot of reasons, but a big part is technology. We can't, and you talked about PIPA, a lot of it is legislative. So the information that physicians acquire, we can't readily access, even though it's acquired in our own facility. The data that we acquire within IH or any other health authority, we can't share with healthcare providers, whether they're physicians, nurses, nurse practitioners, you name it, because of legislative reasons. So these things are about to start to happen, but healthcare is a late adopter. We've got to get going. We have to have disruptive technology. I like the comment because I frankly agree with it. If we can't let the big boys, and TELUS is one of them, TELUS can do, they have and command a big part of the EMR footprint. I think you should take a message back from me to Mr. Entwistle saying, and you know what, the province is a big strategic partner of TELUS, as they are of most every other major company here. Let's use that leverage. At minimum, ensure interoperability with the tech vendors that you have. That should be a minimum. Those are table stakes, but they should be integrated. They should all be able to talk to each other. And I like the notion of having, if all else fails, I want it on this is a 128K device, a gigabyte device, sorry. I can have my whole record, I can have all my imagery, diagnostic, you name it, and I ought to be able to think, not so much that I can understand it, but so that whatever other physician or healthcare provider in another health authority within BC or in another jurisdiction in Canada, or if I'm on a trip to Australia or Europe or somewhere else, they can see it. Because right now there's no way to transfer it. There's no way to transmit it. So I'm getting back, I guess, looping back, Doug, to the foundation. I want to thank the foundation for putting this on. I think this has been outstanding. But even here, we just had the foundation had a planning session, an annual planning session about a week or two ago, Doug, and we talked about technology and environmental issues that are changing. So the big donors, it's not that it's an either or, but as several of you have said, there are micro donors, there are micro donations. That changes the whole complexion for the donor and the philanthropic community. So virtually every industry sector we are in, technology has a role. Technology usually changes the rules, and it's no different than anything we've discussed today. So I've said much, much more than I was asked to, and I had intended to, but you just got me going. I mean, this is just a great topic. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, enjoy the rest of your evening, and thank you for joining us.